Are you ready to unlock your full potential? Motivational speaker, the comeback coach, and goal crusher Joe Rivera brings you inspiring leaders, incredible stories, and valuable lessons on how you can change, grow, and reforge your life. Now, here's your host, Joe Rivera.
What's up? What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Reforge Your Life show. I'm your host, Joe Rivera, and here at the Reforge Your Life show, we love to show you that the comeback is more than possible. And today, I'm super excited about the guest I'm bringing to the show. Y'all are going to love this woman's energy, her story, and what she's doing out there. She's a relationship coach. She's an author, a podcaster. Darla Rodila, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe, for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm super excited for having you, and I'm grateful for us to be able to share this platform together. And Darla, you told me your story a couple of times. I've heard it, and let me tell you, there's no way I'm qualified to tell it as good as you can. But I'd love for you to share with the audience your strength, your hope, your story, and what you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So my story started in childhood, of course. We don't always have examples of what a healthy relationship is. And so that transferred into adulthood. I had false narratives about myself and didn't think I was enough. And so I got involved with men who actually were my comfort zone. And that was, narcissistic abuse. I was involved with 3 narcissists. But through that process, I started to heal. Sometimes our lowest moments are our comebacks. And I realized that there were things that I needed to fix about myself. And I started to really get in touch with who I was, and that I've been told my whole life I was too much, that I wanted too much, my standards were too high, that I didn't deserve love. Those were like the subconscious messages, but those weren't true. I was actually really worthy of everything that I wanted. I am perfect just as I am. Yes, my standards are high, but that's because I value myself.
Man, absolutely. I mean, it's so important to realize what your self-worth is and how valuable you are in life. And there's a lot to unpack there because, being in relationships with narcissists is tough on its own, right? And the things that people have to go through because of those situations, because a lot of people talk about, abusive relationships. And I don't think that enough people realize that, a lot of times dealing with a narcissist is an abusive relationship because maybe it's not physical, but the mental abuse that goes on from that, or verbal abuse that goes on from that, or emotional abuse is important for people to realize that they don't have to stay stuck in that situation. So I want to go back to that for a moment and what that was like, the challenges you went through from being in those types of relationships and that type of environment. Because you said you did it more than once. So I want to speak on that.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one definitely did the most damage. And how I got involved with him in the first place is I didn't have a good relationship with my dad. I wanted to be rescued. And he rode in on his white horse and said, "Here I am. I'm your savior." And I bought into that narrative. But yes, I'm so sorry. I lost my train of thought. Redirect me if you need. So when I got involved with the first narcissist, it was mostly mental abuse. There was financial abuse. It wasn't a physical abuse. And what happens is when you get out, people don't believe you. You don't believe it yourself. I mean, that's the first thing. You don't know what's happening. You don't realize you're losing a piece of yourself every day. And you convince yourself. You bring up a really good point because you mentioned about how the abuse isn't just physical, that it does entail mental abuse, financial abuse. And I certainly found that in my own experiences. I didn't get involved with 3. The first one was definitely the most damaging. I was with him for 10 years. And because I had a narrative within myself that I didn't deserve love, or I was also looking for what was familiar to me, even though it was unhealthy. So my dad was unpredictable. I didn't have a good relationship with him. So I wanted to be saved. And when my first narcissist showed up on his white horse and said, here I am, I'm everything you've ever wanted. And I believe that, I laid down my defenses. First of all, I wanted to be saved. What I found through each relationship is each of them had a different dynamic, but all of them had something that were in common. And one of that is there's a cycle, and it's called love bomb, devalue, and discard. They all love bomb. And basically what that means is they are too good to be true. They lay it on thick. They fast track the relationship. They get you to trust them early. Instead of waiting for that trust to develop, I just gave it away. The thing is that with each relationship, luckily for myself, because I did start to take time in between my relationships. And even though, yes, I had 2 boyfriends after that were narcissists, the intensity decreased because narcissists are on different levels. There's spectrums of them. And I learned each time. And to be honest, their love bomb, their game is different. And so that's also how I got involved with other ones. In addition to the healing that I needed to do for myself, their little gimmick was different. Whether it was showering me with gifts and trips, or it was connecting in with my love of travel and outdoors, or it was playing on my sympathies because they had a medical condition. Either all 3 of those things kind of played to my heartstrings. But what I had to do for myself is, first of all, listen to my body when the red flag went off right away and not ignore it. And also just keep working on myself and my healing, and those standards that I talked about earlier. Those played in big time because narcissists still show up in my life, but I catch them faster now.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like there was a lot of leaning into things that you really enjoyed, or even sometimes some of your weaknesses, and playing that manipulation towards that to be able to lure you in. Oh man, I can't speak today. To lure you in.
Yes.
So what was it like after the manipulation came in, where you started to realize, man, there's verbal abuse going on, and that you still stuck around?
Yeah. So the first time I was with my ex-husband for 10 years, I didn't know I was being abused during that time. I didn't even know it till a year after I left him. It was a counselor that came into my life and pointed it out, and I thought she was crazy. I was like, absolutely not. This man loves me. It was devastating. And, what actually led me to her, if we backtrack a little bit, is I was what they call trauma bonded. I was addicted to him. I was literally addicted to him like a drug, and I couldn't seem to stay away from him. But I was continuing to be abused even after we were separated. And I almost took my life during that process. I hit that rock bottom. It was the surrender to my higher power. Then the counselor came in, and then she pointed out that it was abuse. And I had to basically grieve 2 relationships. I had to grieve the loss of the person I thought he was. And I also had to grieve the loss of the future I thought I had with him. The reality that everything was real to me, but to him, it was all just a game. That was hard.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like it could be challenging. It's completely understandable. So what, when you realized how hard it was, and you were, what was the trauma bonded? Man, I love that term. I never heard that one before. That's important for the audience to pick up on, because that happens to a lot of people in this situation. And when you were trauma bonded, how did you break out of that?
It wasn't easy. I broke no contact so many times. I think there were there's a lot of things. First of all, I had to get right with myself. I really had to get straight that I had a lot of childhood wounds that were playing out in real time. The reason he had so much power over me from the very beginning is because I wanted to be saved. How I got out of it was I continued to see that counselor. She talked sense into me. I had an amazing friend. So I had to get rid of a lot of people in my life because I realized I had a lot of people who weren't there, that weren't going to get me through this. They wanted to keep me mired in it. And I had one friend in particular who said, stop calling him. If you have the desire, I don't care what time of day or night it is, you call me instead. So that helped me to break the pattern. She helped me to move away. I was being stalked. And so I left the state and she helped me to move. And I think that physical distance helped for me. That helped to break it because I wanted to stay in no contact, but I felt like I didn't trust myself if I was in the same geographical area as him as well.
I want to, it's so important to remove yourself from toxic situations. And sometimes it takes moving to another state, moving to another country, whatever it is, to remove yourself from that situation and those type of surroundings. Because when you're in surroundings that trigger you, it could make you go back to that drug. In this situation, it's, the relationship that you were in. I'm curious though, because you mentioned also how at your bottom, you also were contemplating suicide. Can you take us back to that for a moment and what that looked like? Because I think that this is really important for other people who are going through a similar situation and they're contemplating that same situation or, they're hurting themselves in some way.
Mm-hmm. First of all, I understand what that moment is like. And I understand how you get there. And that darkness is so dark. You can't see past today, tomorrow, 5 minutes. All you know is you're in so much pain and you just want to make it end. And what got me there was because of the financial abuse. I was struggling financially. I was barely getting by. I didn't understand why he had done this. And I didn't understand how I was going to get myself to stop interacting with him. And that moment of, I don't know how to fix this. All I know is I can't keep living like this. And the only thing that stopped me was he was on a smear campaign telling people I was the crazy one, because that's the gaslighting part. They drive you, you're not insane, but they drive you to look like you are and you feel like you are. And so he was telling people this. And I realized in that luckily last moment that if I do this, I've given him all the ammunition to say, see, and I'm kind of a competitive kind of person. And there was something left, that scrapper of a child that had to protect myself showed up in that moment and said, don't let him win. Don't let him win. And that moment of crying out to my higher power and saying, I don't know how to do this, but if you want me to stay on this earth, you better show up and you better start giving me clues and showing me how to fix that. And that's when the counselor came in.
And it's amazing how that higher source works like that, right? When you start communicating with the higher source and really building a relationship, and that higher source, whether someone calls it God, the universe, the infinite intelligence, whatever you believe, but learning to build a relationship where you're really leaning into that higher source and realizing that higher source is what's going to help you unlock your fullest potential. So vital. But once you start learning to do that, and the doors that start opening, the mountains that start getting moved, and sometimes the higher source is going to use other people in your life to connect you to them to be able to help you. You know what I mean? And it's so powerful. But I'm curious because you mentioned that there was a lot of gaslighting going on. Was there times in this relationship or in the other relationships that you went through? Because I know that a lot of people who go through these narcissist relationships or these abusive relationships, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically, they start to blame themselves rather than realizing that it's the person that they're in the relationship with that's the problem. They start putting the blame on themselves and start believing the story that the abuser is telling them. What did that look like for you?
Definitely that happened. And yes, and what happens is they do get to you to think it's all your fault. There were sometimes it was small incidences where one night we got in an argument and he threw the computer on the floor and dented it. And I got upset. I'm really big about taking care of my personal belongings. So I reacted like, I can't believe you just did that. And he would say things like, well, if you hadn't made me mad, I wouldn't have thrown the computer. And in that moment, instead of realizing I don't have control over you, you're a grown adult. You made the choice, whether I made you angry or not, you made the choice to damage something, to do something. But I wasn't able to see that in that moment. He got me to believe that if I just tried harder, if I just dressed the way he wanted me to do, if I said the right things, he just kept feeding me this message that I'll love you if. And I kept trying my darndest to be everything he wanted me to be. And you can see it doesn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So this question is for the audience to pick up on, because there's people out there who maybe are listening to the show, watching it, who are going through something similar, or they know someone who is. And I believe that, them being able to share things like this can help. Or you being able to share it with the audience definitely can help. But so you went through it the first time, and what made you go back to it after getting out of it, to go back to that same type of similar toxic situation?
I didn't pick up on the red flags. While the situation was different, maybe it wasn't as intense, I didn't listen to my gut. To be honest, when something felt off, I would shove it to the side. Also within me, this is a pattern I'm breaking in real time, is that I have a tendency to be very black and white. I'm all in or I'm all out. And this is perfect for a narcissist, because when I invest in a relationship too early, when I divulge too much information too early, I'm actually giving them exactly what they need to hook me. And I had to stop doing that. That's how I got involved with the last one that I broke up with 2 years ago. I was all in, and I actually broke up with him and got back together with him. But it was that second time that was the reveal.
What?
Go ahead.
No, my bad. I thought you finished.
Yeah, no, it was more realizing from now on, like when I'm single right now on purpose, just because I haven't found someone that fits what I'm looking for. But if I feel something's off, but I can't put my finger on it, I walk. I would rather walk away from someone who may have been healthy just because I've had an intuition that something's off. It's okay. I'll move on and find somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's you learn to pick up on those situations. It sounds like through your journey, to be like, you know what, this doesn't feel right for me. I'm going to pick up and move, because if this was meant to be, then I wouldn't be leaving anyway. So I'll find something else. And I think that sounds like you learn to set boundaries. What it sounds like to for yourself, which is important.
Yeah, I've had to set a lot of boundaries for myself, and I have rules now, and I hold to them, even if they come back and say, oh, well, I've changed. Oh, I've done this. Oh, well, no, once you show me who you are, that saying, if they show you who they are once, believe them the first time.
Yeah. Yeah, don't wait for them to show you different.
No.
Yeah, that's an important one to create. So I'm curious, what was the actual turning point though? Where was it where it was like, man, you know what? Because I know, when I hit my bottom, it took me to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. I had to go through a second overdose. That first one wasn't good enough for me to hit that bottom.
Right.
Almost dying, 6 cans of Narcan later, I finally said, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. So what was it for you that was your turning point where you said, you know what? Enough's enough. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah, it was that third one. That was the biggest wake up call for me because it had happened again. I went several years and didn't have any narcissist in my life. And then I had two within a 2-year period. That when I ended it with him, I said, okay, what is going on with me? Why was I attracted to him beyond the physical attraction? What was it inside of me that felt I needed to be with someone like that? I really got serious about healing my childhood wounds. I ended up, it was crazy. We were listening to a book called The Body Keeps the Score. I forget the author's name, but he's very famous in somatics in our body. Our trauma is not just in our bodies, but in our brain and our memories. It's in our physical body. And I got really intrigued by that concept. So I started to get a certification as well in somatics to help other women. And in that process, I realized that I had been told my whole life by my body that something's wrong or I need to heal this. And that really helped me. It was the decision that I'm going to figure out why I keep repeating these patterns and break them, but also learning to listen to my body. When we talked about these people, when I feel off, that plays a huge part in it. Why does my throat feel tight? Why does my stomach flip? That's a big one for me. My stomach flips, and acting on it and not second guessing myself.
Yeah, that's a big one too. Acting on it, not second guessing yourself, and going with that, following your intuition and knowing that gut feeling is a feeling that you're getting for a reason, and following through and taking action on it. That's not easy for a lot of people. So man, congratulations on learning that and utilizing it to be able to get yourself out of your situation. Because if you didn't learn that, I mean, who knows? You could have still been stuck in those types of situations and accepting, things that you're not destined for, accepting a life that you don't deserve rather than accepting the life that you do deserve. So I want to acknowledge you on that and say, man, that's really powerful and important.
Thank you. Yeah, it's not an easy road sometimes. I have to be willing to be disliked. I have to be willing to hurt feelings. I have to be willing to be questioned. But when I think about how I felt then and how I feel now, and yes, it can be lonely at times, but I'm in charge of my life now. I make decisions and I can choose to be with this person or not and feel okay and whole within myself. That's worth way more than where I was, 2 years ago, 5 years ago.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's all about improving anyway. It's all about that progression. Progression is where the win is, right? So you're progressing every year, looking back at, man, you know what? I'm in so much more of a better place than I was 2 or 3 years ago. That's a win. I'm curious though, because, when we go through these challenges and hit these bottoms in our life, there are limited beliefs that have to get cracked through in order to go to that next level. What was some of the limited beliefs that you had to learn to crack through and learn that, you know what, those limited beliefs aren't going to control me. I control my destiny, not my circumstances and condition.
There were so many. Probably the biggest one is that I didn't deserve love. Love was conditional. I was definitely treated that way as a child. My mom often used silent treatment as punishment when I didn't do exactly as she wanted me to do. So I took on this narrative that I have to be something I'm not, first of all, to be loved, that I don't deserve love just for the sake of my existence. And there were also things that I had to overcome. I grew up very hypervigilant because I'm pretty certain my dad was bipolar. At the very least, he was extremely unpredictable. His behavior, we never knew what version was showing up. And so there was this version of I have to conform as well to keep the peace. It's my job to not upset them. And people pleasing played into that. It's that self-worth. It was also watching my parents and how they didn't get along. I carried that into, well, marriage isn't supposed to be peaceful. It isn't supposed to be good. It's just two people that are together in whatever form.
Yeah, man, that's really important for the audience to pick up on, because that's not what a relationship is supposed to be, and you're not supposed to teach your kids that's what a relationship is supposed to be, right? Because people end up staying in relationships even when they're unhappy, and they think that they're staying in the relationship because of the kids is helping the children. But guess what? You're not helping the children when you're staying in a toxic relationship that's just draining your energy and draining your partner's energy, but you're also draining your kids' energy, and you're draining their mind because you're allowing them to think that that's okay to stay in a situation because even though you're unhappy. I mean, for a kid to see their parents, maybe like not sleeping in the same bed and not being affectionate with each other and just staying in the situation to stay in it, and that's not a way to live life. And that's not a way to lead your kids into their future and help them be able to lead the next generation. But being aware of that is so important. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think it's vital for people to really understand that.
Yeah. And I sent a lot of messages to my daughter. Her dad was not abusive, and I was with him for a very long time. And I got a lot of pushback when I decided to divorce him. And it was for that very reason. Am I going to send her the message that it's okay to be unhappy? Or am I going to send her the message that I deserve better? And of course, it was a whole, journey in itself. But it was disturbing to me when I realized how many years I had been a bad example. I was the hot mess, going from one relationship to the other, chasing that feeling. And, in these past couple of years, as I've really changed my game as far as how I view myself, it makes me feel better that hopefully, she's in a great marriage and she married a great guy. And I'm so happy she didn't make my mistakes, right? But I was also over the years showing her this message that, that whether she's in a marriage or that's great or not, that within herself, she deserves to be happy.
Well, Darla, I want to point out something else that's important. The reason why your daughter is, one of the reasons your daughter's in a healthy relationship and happy is because you broke the chain and you allowed her to see that, you know what? I don't have to live like this. You don't have to live like this. You don't have to settle for less. You could go out and get what you deserve. You don't have to settle and say, you know what? I don't deserve more. I don't deserve love, or, stay in a situation where you're stuck. So you coming out of the situation, I'm sure played a huge part in your daughter being able to find the relationship that she was able to find.
Yeah. Thank you. I would like to think that for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. Because let's look at it from the opposite side, right? Where you mentioned how with your upbringing and the limited beliefs that instilled in your life, what did that cause you to go out there and look for and settle for in your life, right? It was the complete opposite. So being that I'm a big believer, man, that a lot of this starts from the upbringing that people have and the way we raise our children is what our children are going to look like, because the story we feed them is the story that they end up going out and looking for to live. So, man, I think that I want to take this moment to acknowledge you, not just as a woman and the example you're putting out there for other women who are going through similar situations, but also as a parent, and for the example that you have put out there for your children. Is just incredible and so important. So I want to take that moment to acknowledge you, if you don't acknowledge yourself enough already for it.
Well, I appreciate that. I did have a moment a couple of years ago when I learned about generational trauma, which is what we're really talking about, where I decided it ends with me. And there's a lot of other things that we could talk for hours on, which we won't. But there were things also within my family structure that I had to face and speak out against. And I've gotten a lot of pushback on that as well. But it's about she got pregnant. And as she was preparing to be a mother herself, I didn't want her to pass on to my grandson what I passed on to her.
Important. And thank you for breaking the generational curse, because you are now leading the way for your daughter and for your grandchild, which is so important, and it's so important to have the audience realize that those generational curses, they don't have to be your future. Because there's a generational curse going on in your family, that this pattern that hasn't been broken, you have the opportunity to interrupt and break that pattern and change what the future of your generation looks like and future generation. Because look, Darla's living proof of that. I'm living proof of that. Substance abuse ran deep in my family history, and being able to break that pattern has been able to hopefully help generations and generations to come from, the Rivera side of the family. So I think it's important for the audience to pick up on, man, you're not a victim of your circumstances and conditions. They don't control your destiny, and your family's past doesn't have to dictate your future. Just like your past doesn't have to dictate your future. You control what your destiny is going to look like. So take control of that, y'all. Darla, I also believe that when we break through these limited beliefs, there are some core values that are uncovered that help us be able to lean into those core values to come when life throws those curveballs and knocks us to our knees. Because guess what? Y'all are going to get the curveballs. You're going to get knocked to your knees, and you got to learn how to get back up. And when you do, you're going to be able to lean into core values that do help you get back up. So what are some of those core values that what are some of those core values that you uncovered that you now lean onto when you're going through your difficult times?
I would say probably the biggest one was authenticity. And I have been to be honest, I've been going through a hard time. I moved back to Colorado in March, and I've been having some difficulty making a new community. I left behind my old, but I had to remember my value is authenticity, consistent communication. It's trust, building trust. And when those are lacking, then it's okay for me just to be in my own space, because the problem before was I pushed those values to the side, where now they are in the front, and they are more important than putting the Band-Aid on it for the moment of, oh, I'm feeling lonely today. I think I'm just going to go to the bar and let that guy buy me a drink that, gave me the bad vibe, right? Because he's not going to be consistent. He's not going to be authentic. He's not going to be truthful. Those things are so important. And it's both sides. I mean, this is a reciprocal kind of thing. It's not just they have to be truthful to me. I have to be truthful with them. And sometimes that means saying things that are uncomfortable. Like, I'm not okay with this. That is actually really important too, because when I express my needs and I do it in a healthy way, I'm giving them the opportunity to meet it or not. And then I have the opportunity to decide how I'm going to react to that.
Yes. You have the opportunity to choose how you respond in life. And I think it's really important for people to realize that there's a difference because what you're talking about is responding to a situation rather than, allowing your emotions to get the best of you and reacting to the situation, right? Because there's a huge difference in when we react and when we respond. When we respond, we're putting thought into it, and we're allowing ourselves to remove the emotion and handle the situation from a mental aspect of being able to respond properly, and not allowing, the situation or circumstances to allow us to react in a way that could become toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. That's so important. So, Darla, let me ask you, what would you say is the biggest pillar or the most important pillar that you lean into for your comeback, that you say, man, if it wasn't for this, I would have never been able to bounce back?
I think it's really finding value in myself, because that drives everything. It was getting to know myself and loving myself, not just the mantra in the mirror, but really just embodying who I am and accepting who I am. Faults and all. I have a lot of those. But because when we value ourselves, we're going to want to hold those standards even when it's uncomfortable, because we know we deserve what will be the outcome of holding those standards.
I'd love for you to share with the audience where they could find you and what you have going on right now.
Yeah. People can find me at highvaluewoman.info and all of my social media. I have a podcast as well. My blog, anything you want to find out about me is all on that website. And yes, and I specifically coach women who have been labeled too much, who've been told their standards are too high. Often they're high achieving and they're very successful and maybe in their work career life, but in their relationships, they're just shrinking to fit in. And I help them also to recognize that they're perfect just how they are and they're whole.
Love that. Love what you're doing out there, girl. Keep doing it. So when you hear the word purpose, what comes to mind?
Did you say purpose?
Yes.
Purpose. Purpose is something that, for me, is something that lights me up, that excites me and drives me. It's a mission, basically, a mission to help others.
Love that. Love that. And man, it's every time it's amazing, because there's been so many times where I ask someone, about purpose. And I think every single high achiever that I ask and someone who performs at their highest level always talks about how it has something to do with inspiring and empowering others, because being of service is so important when you're fully walking and living in your purpose. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. When you hear the word reforge, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind for me is rebuilding, redoing, not necessarily fixing, but taking that foundation and maybe filling in that cracks and then rising up and having a great structure.
Yes, absolutely. So, Darla, there's somebody out there right now who's looking to reforge their life, whether it's in their business, their finances, their health, wellness, mental health, whatever it is, some domain of their life. And they don't have the tools. They don't have the warehouse. And what would be one piece of advice that you could give them?
I would say start small, because baby steps add up. And maybe that just looks like, maybe you're a mom who hasn't had time to invest in herself. Take 5 minutes and do something that you enjoy. Maybe you don't know what you enjoy. What is that? Find that and carve out some time and invest in yourself.
And here's a question that I'm curious to know. What's one thing that the Darla now would tell the Darla from 20 years ago, 30 years ago?
Wow. One thing. I guess there's a lot of things, but if I had to narrow it down to one, right? If it was one, that you are not going to believe who you're going to become, that what your future is seems impossible to you now. But if you just hold on and just live each day and start over, you'll make it.
It's one thing that the audience doesn't know about you that you enjoy doing for fun.
Musician, so I love to sing. It's my biggest drug is to get up on stage. Yeah, and sing. And sometimes I just do it with people I don't even know. I just get up and figure it out. But yeah.
Yes. And I just want to acknowledge the fact of how you mentioned when we first started the conversation of how, the narcissist boyfriend was your drug of choice. And now where you've overcome that and created this new life, music is now your drug of choice, and how you go out there and be able to really enjoy your life. Man, what a transformation. Congratulations. That's a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for coming through on the show. I knew you were going to bring the energy. I knew your story was going to be powerful, but you brought that and so much more. And I'm really grateful to be able to have you on this platform to share it with you. And thank you so much for coming through.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And for the audience out there who's listening, watching, don't forget, please, man, the same favor, LFSS, like, follow, subscribe, and most importantly, share the episode, because there's somebody out there right now who's looking to reforge their life in any domain of their life, their health, their finances, their relationship, their profession, whatever it is. And they don't have the know-how. They don't have the tools. And you sharing this episode could help them be able to reforge their life in any domain they look to do it in. So please share the episode. Stay productive, stay purposeful, and stay blessed, y'all. Till the next time.
You've been listening to Reforge Your Life with your host, Joe Rivera. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. To learn more about Joe Rivera and how he can help you or your organization reforge your life and regain your place at the top, head on over to withjoerivera.com and follow Joe on all social platforms. The Reforge Your Life podcast was produced by Thrive Loud Productions. Thanks for listening.